In the year 480 BC, the known world held its breath. It was a world that belonged to one man. His name was Xerxes, the great king, the king of kings, ruler of the Achaemenid Empire, from the sands of Egypt to the mountains of India. His will was law. His power was absolute. His wealth immeasurable. He was not just a king. He was a living god, descended from a line of conquerors who had forged the largest empire humanity had ever known. But one small corner of the world remained defiant: the rocky, stubborn peninsula of Greece. 10 years earlier, his father, Darius, had tried to tame these insolent city-states and had failed on the plains of Marathon. For Xerxes, this was more than a military objective. It was a personal vendetta, a stain on his family's honor. He would not just conquer Greece. He would erase it from memory. He would grind its people into dust and salt the earth where their cities once stood. This would be a lesson for all time, a testament to his divine authority. To this end, he summoned the greatest military force ever assembled. An army, Sobast chroniclers claimed it drank rivers dry as it marched. Soldiers from 46 nations, speaking 100 different tongues, all united under a single purpose: his will. Immortals in their gilded armor, Scythian archers on horseback, war elephants from the Far East, and a fleet of over 1,000 ships. The pride of Phoenicia and Egypt. The ground trembled under the weight of their advance. The dust they raised blotted out the sun. It was not an army. It was a migration, a human tide poised to wash over Europe and extinguish the flickering flame of Western civilization. To cross from Asia into Europe, Xerxes commanded a feat of engineering that bordered on blasphemy. He ordered a bridge of boats to be built across the Heligon Sea, the turbulent strait known as a mile-long pontoon bridge, a roadway for his army to march over the waves, tethering 2 continents together. It was a monument to his ambition, a declaration that even the domain of the gods was subject to his command. For weeks, his engineers labored, linking hundreds of ships side by side with massive flax and papyrus cables, laying down a wooden causeway. The bridge was complete, a path of conquest laid across the water. But the sea, ancient and untamable, did not recognize the authority of mortal kings. As the first columns prepared to cross, a ferocious storm descended from the north. The winds howled like vengeful spirits. The waves rose, mountainous and furious, and fell upon the bridge with primal force. Ropes thick as a man's waist snapped like thread. Timber splintered. The mighty ships were tossed and smashed against one another. In a matter of hours, Xerxes' masterpiece, his defiant link between worlds, was reduced to wreckage, swallowed by the churning chaos of the Hellas. From a white throne set upon a hillside, Xerxes watched the destruction. He saw his ambition mocked, his power defied not by men, but by nature itself. The courtiers around him trembled, expecting an outburst of royal frustration. What came was something far more terrifying. A cold, silent, all-consuming rage. This was not a setback. It was an insurrection. The sea had committed an act of treason against its rightful master. And treason would be punished. In an act of hubris that would echo through eternity, Xerxes ordered the sea itself to be disciplined. He commanded his soldiers to march to the water's edge. 300 lashes were delivered to the waves, the whips cracking as if striking the back of a disobedient slave. He had fetters, heavy iron chains, cast into the surf to symbolically shackle the rebellious waters. Red-hot brands were plunged into the waves, searing the flesh of the sea god Poseidon. As his men carried out this bizarre ritual, a herald shouted the king's curse. "You bitter water, your master lays this punishment upon you for wronging him without cause. King Xerxes will cross you with or without your permission." His rage momentarily sated, Xerxes had the engineers responsible for the first bridge beheaded. New masters were appointed, and a second, stronger bridge was constructed. This time, it held for 7 days and 7 nights the endless river of men, horses, and wagons flowed across the Hellespont. The god king had tamed the sea. Now he would tame Greece. The invasion began. The Persian hosts moved like a glacier, unstoppable and immense. City after city in northern Greece fell, submitting to the overwhelming power of the great king. There was no hope of matching his numbers. The choice was simple: bow or be broken. And yet, a flicker of resistance remained. A coalition of Greek states, led by Athens and the warrior society of Sparta, chose to fight. They chose freedom over servitude. Their first stand would be at a narrow coastal pass called Thermopylae, the Hot Gates. Here, a tiny force of a few thousand Greeks, led by 300 Spartans and their king, Leonidas, would make their stand. It was a place where numbers meant little, a narrow corridor between the mountains and the sea, where the Persian horde could only advance a few men at a time. For 3 days, the impossible happened. The flower of the Persian army, including Xerxes' own elite guard, the immortals, threw themselves against a wall of bronze shields and long spears and were cut down in heaps. From his throne, Xerxes leaped to his feet in fury and disbelief 3 times as he watched his best warriors fall before this handful of defiant men. He was learning a new lesson: that the will to be free could be a weapon more potent than any sword. Though the pass was eventually taken through betrayal, the sacrifice at Thermopylae was not in vain. It bought the Greeks precious time and ignited a fire of resistance across the land. It became a symbol of courage against impossible odds. Pressing on, Xerxes marched south and found the city of Athens abandoned. In a Pyrrhic victory, he fulfilled his vow and burned the city to the ground, its temples and homes consumed by fire. He had destroyed the symbol of Greek democracy, but he could not destroy the idea. The Athenian population and their navy had evacuated to the nearby island of Salamis. It was there, in the narrow straits between the island and the mainland, that the fate of the war would be decided. Confident in his overwhelming numerical superiority, Xerxes was lured into a trap. His massive fleet, with its large, cumbersome triremes, crowded into the confined waters. They were a floating city, powerful in the open sea, but here they were a tangled mess. The smaller, more agile Greek ships, commanded by the brilliant Athenian strategist Themistocles, darted in and out, ramming and sinking the Persian vessels. Chels and Suez. The Persian ships collided with each other, their oars tangled, their lines of command broken. Xerxes watched this disaster unfold from the same golden throne he had used to witness his army cross the Hellespont. But this time, he was not watching a triumph of his will. He was watching the heart of his power, his invincible navy, being systematically dismantled before his eyes. He saw his dream of conquest sink beneath the waves, along with thousands of his men and hundreds of his ships. The sea he had whipped and branded was now taking its revenge, swallowing his fleet whole. The Battle of Salamis was a catastrophic defeat. With his navy shattered and his supply lines threatened, Xerxes' position was untenable. The God King, the man who commanded the world, was forced into a humiliating retreat. He left a portion of his army behind under his general Mardonius, an army that would be decisively crushed the following year at the Battle of Plataea. But Xerxes himself fled back to Asia, a broken man. He recrossed the Hellespont not as a triumphant conqueror, but as a fugitive. The bridge that had symbolized his power now marked the limit of it. Xerxes returned to Persia, but he was never the same. He had set out to conquer a continent, backed by the greatest army in history. He had challenged the mountains, the sea, and the spirit of a free people, and he had failed. His story serves not as a testament to power, but as a timeless warning, a warning about the dangers of hubris, the folly of believing one can command the forces of nature, and the unbreakable strength of those who fight for their freedom. The vastness of an army cannot conquer the terrain of a hostile land, the fury of an untamable sea, or the iron will of a people determined not to be enslaved. History remembers Xerxes, not as the god he claimed to be, but as the man who learned that even for a king of kings, some things are forever beyond control. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past compelling, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more epic stories from history. We'll see you next time.